Every NFL season, big decisions are made, and to put it bluntly, some of these moves end up being pretty dumb. We're only halfway through the 2022 season and have already seen plenty of bad calls that are costing clubs a chance of becoming viable contenders and potentially closing their Super Bowl windows. Stay tuned while we go through a few of the NFL's dumbest decisions in 2022. First up, the Carolina Panthers keeping Matt Rule to start the season. After a 1-4 start in 2022, the Carolina Panthers mercifully ended Matt Rule's tenure as head coach. While the club wasn't considered a legitimate contender heading into the season, it did itself no favors by sticking with an inept coach after consecutive 5-win seasons. Rule was once an intriguing hire due to his stellar performance in college. He led Temple to 2 consecutive 10-win seasons before departing Baylor with an 11-3 record in 2019. However, it quickly became clear that his methods would not work at the professional level. Poor quarterback play and an inability to develop a quality starter marred his time with the Panthers. Veteran Teddy Bridgewater only won 4 games in 2020, prompting the Panthers to give up significant draft capital the following year to acquire Sam Darnold after he failed to impress with the New York Jets. Moving on, bringing in Sam Darnold made things even worse for them. Darnold, despite winning his first 3 starts, proved to be yet another blunder for the organization. He went on to lose 5 of his next 6 games before getting hurt. He returned later in the year and lost the 3 additional contests in which he competed. Rather than drafting a franchise quarterback, Rule's Panthers tested the waters with another veteran, Baker Mayfield. Unsurprisingly, the move did not work out, as Mayfield struggled in Carolina and ultimately cost Rule his job. The Panthers are now stuck going through the motions of another lost season, this time under interim head coach Steve Wilks. They're forced to return to Mayfield after benching him for PJ Walker, who sprained his ankle. It's a bad situation, one that could have been avoided if the team had hired a better coach sooner and made better personnel decisions. Up next, the Chicago Bears waited way too long to unleash Justice Fields. Despite paying a high price to get their quarterback in the 2021 draft, the Chicago Bears took an excruciatingly long time to give Justin Fields full control of the offense. Despite a coaching change from Matt Nagy to Matt Eberflus, the first-year signal caller was rarely given more than the bare minimum to manage a game early on. This has shifted in the last 5 weeks. Fields has finally begun to emerge as the star quarterback Chicago envisioned when selecting him with the 11th overall pick. If Fields continues on his current path, he could end 2022 with one of the greatest rushing performances by a quarterback in history. His passing abilities have also improved dramatically from earlier in his career. While the young dual-threat quarterback continues to make mistakes, his brilliant runs and improving throws now outweigh the turnovers and bad throws. Unfortunately for Chicagoans, it appears that it is too late for the 3-7 Bears to capitalize on Fields' performance and make the playoffs, but the team is set up for success in the coming years. Now we have the Denver Broncos, who went all in for Russell Wilson with an unproven head coach. This offseason, the Denver Broncos were one of the most popular. The team made the biggest splash of the spring by giving up the farm to acquire Russell Wilson, but the move appears to have been a bit short-sighted. It's difficult to blame Denver for being desperate for a competent quarterback after churning through a slew of underwhelming starters over 6 consecutive playoff-less seasons following Peyton Manning's retirement. While the Broncos were able to sign Wilson, the pairing of the veteran quarterback with a first-time head coach hasn't gone as planned. Nathaniel Hackett was one of the most sought-after candidates after serving as the offensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers from 2019 to 2021. Now, Hackett could be in big trouble. Hackett has struggled to translate his successes as a coordinator into his head coaching job. The Broncos are not only 3-6 and out of the AFC West race after 10 weeks, but they also have the league's worst scoring offense. They are only averaging 14.6 points per game. That's 1 point less than the number 31 Pittsburgh Steelers offense, which is led by rookie quarterback Kenny Pickett. This quarterback-coach combination is clearly failing. Unfortunately for the Broncos, there isn't much help on the way after spending a lot of draft capital to get Wilson. Denver did recoup a first-round pick before the November 1st trade deadline, but it did so at the expense of Bradley Chubb, one of the top players on a still respectable defense. It'd be surprising if Hackett wasn't gone by the end of the season. With Wilson signed to a 5-year, $245 million contract extension, the team will have little choice but to fire its coach and hope for better results with a fresh start in 2023. Next, let's talk about how the Green Bay Packers were overly confident in Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a future Hall of Famer with one of the most memorable NFL careers of any quarterback. Despite his incredible abilities, the Packers have discovered the hard way that their back-to-back MVP still requires talented receivers. While it's understandable that Green Bay declined to meet superstar wideout Davante Adams' high asking price after agreeing to a 3-year extension with Rodgers worth more than $150 million, the team raised some eyebrows by deciding to enter 2022 with a couple of unproven rookies and a few over-the-hill or flawed veterans as Rodgers' projected top targets. Without Adams, the team has has struggled mightily, scoring just one touchdown in the season opener against division rival Minnesota Vikings and failing to eclipse the 30-point mark until Week 10. Rodgers' chances of repeating as MVP have diminished after his yards per pass attempt fell below 7. In 2020 and 2021, he averaged 8.2 and 7.7 respectively, and his 7 interceptions have already surpassed the total he threw in the previous 2 years combined. Moving on, Rodgers has dragged the Packers down with him. The Packers had their worst losing streak since Rodgers took over as the starter in 2008, falling 5 games in a row before breaking it. That 31-28 overtime win over the Dallas Cowboys coincided with rookie receiver Christian Watson's breakout performance. The Packers selected Watson with the 34th overall pick, but he struggled to establish an early rapport with his quarterback and dealt with numerous injuries to begin his professional career. Watson exploded for 107 yards and 3 touchdowns on 4 receptions in Week 10 after only catching 10 passes for 88 yards in his first 6 games. It remains to be seen whether Watson can fill the void left by Adams' departure as an elite wideout. Even if he does develop into a consistent scoring and big play threat down the stretch, it may be too late for the 4-6 Packers, and a costly lesson will be learned as the team's Super Bowl window closes. Up next, the Los Angeles Rams failed to get a hold of depth and offensive line talent. The Los Angeles Rams' dreams of becoming the first repeat Super Bowl champions since the New England Patriots in 2003-04 is all but over. After yet another heartbreaking defeat and the loss of another key piece in Week 10, arguably the team's only consistent performer on offense, Cooper Kupp, the 3-6 Rams have a very slim chance of turning things around in time for the playoffs, let alone make a deep run. It's become painfully clear that this team lacks the refinement that last year's championship team possessed, particularly on the offensive line and overall depth. Los Angeles faced an uphill battle after stalwart left tackle Andrew Whitworth announced his retirement after winning his first ring. Former backup Joe Noteboom received a large contract to replace him, but he only lasted 6 weeks before suffering a torn Achilles. The offensive trenches were further depleted at nearly every position, with a rash of injuries so severe that right tackle Rob Haverstein was the only starter still standing at the position he was originally in from weeks 2 to 7. Lastly, the Los Angeles Rams are barely keeping it together with all the injuries this team's had. With this constant turnover, Los Angeles's pass protection has inevitably deteriorated. The offensive line was ranked dead last in Pro Football Focus's rankings heading into Week 10, and quarterback Matthew Stafford has been battered, and as a result, taking 28 sacks. The veteran quarterback missed the previous game due to a concussion, but struggled to replicate his 2021 success prior to the injury. In 8 starts, he has completed 195 of 285 passes for 1,928 yards and 8 touchdowns against 8 interceptions. Stafford had 2,477 yards and 22 touchdowns after 8 games last year, with only 4 interceptions and 7 sacks. Free agent additions like Allen Robinson II have made little of an impact, while the absences of Odell Beckham Jr. and Austin Corbett are felt keenly. With little draft capital or available funds, the Rams will have to work hard this offseason, not only to keep their core together, but also to find the depth needed to withstand the types of injuries they have dealt with in the past. That's a wrap for this video. Was there anything else this season that you thought was a bad call on the NFL's part? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. We'll see you in the next one.